Hey everybody, thank you for joining us for ABC News Live. I am Kana Whitworth, and it is a busy news day today as millions of Americans are under evacuation orders as Hurricane Florence is barreling towards the eastern seaboard as a Category 4 storm. Also, today marks 17 years since the September 11th terrorist attacks that killed nearly 3,000 people here in New York City, Washington, D.C., and Shanksville, Pennsylvania. There are a number of ceremonies happening across the country, and we'll get to those in a minute. But first, here are your headlines.
Ratcheting up the pressure on the Palestinians to return to negotiations with Israel, the Trump administration has closed the Palestinian Liberation Organization office in Washington. Attorneys for the family of a black man shot dead by a white Dallas police officer in the man's own home says the arrest affidavit doesn't jibe with neighbors' accounts. Attorney Lee Merritt says Officer Amber Geiger failed at basic police work, gathering really simple facts.
Independent witnesses have already come forward to say that they heard this officer pounding on the door and demanding to be let in. We find those independent witnesses to be very credible, and if the door is open, there would have been no need for that.
The case going to a grand jury. More serious charges could follow. Americans are borrowing more. The Federal Reserve says consumer debt jumped over $16 billion in July. Credit card debt, which fell in June, turned around in July and rose by over $1 billion. And Fortnite, the popular video game, is going offline to a board game. A Fortnite version of Monopoly is on the way. It launches next month.
And our top story, of course, is Hurricane Florence barreling towards the eastern seaboard in the Atlantic right now. Again, a Category 4 storm. There are mandatory evacuations in 3 states, and millions of Americans are preparing for what could be the most catastrophic hurricane to hit the eastern seaboard in decades. We want to start off with Rob Marciano. He's in Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. And Rob, town officials there just now issuing mandatory evacuations. Looks like they might go into effect tomorrow morning.
That's right, and then at that time we'll be pulling back off this beach because we do expect a significant storm surge, and when you're talking about Category 4 or even Category 3 for that matter, winds, you don't want to be anywhere near that. So this is a situation to be taken seriously, no doubt about that. Already over 1 million people within the evacuation zone, and that number is just going to go higher and higher as we go throughout the day today. The center of Florence, about 900 miles that way, and it's heading in this direction, and it's doing so rapidly, although the timing of it has slowed down just a little bit. The center of it, you can see the eye, 130 mile an hour winds. It's come down 10 miles an hour off the last advisory. Kind of goes through these cycles. We expect it to re-strengthen throughout the day today. The forecast track really hasn't changed a whole lot. And don't pay attention so much to the line, because by the time this thing gets to the coastline, the timing is probably around midnight Thursday night into early Friday morning. But we'll be feeling the effects here Thursday morning without a doubt, and there'll be a good 10 to 12 hours ahead of the storm, or at least 10 hours ahead of the storm, where we'll see tropical storm force winds, because the wind field is tropical storm force winds are 150 miles outside the center, and then hurricane force winds are almost 100 miles wide as well. So there's going to be a large storm that will hit the brakes once it gets onshore Friday morning into Saturday, and then we're looking at a catastrophic rain event potentially inland that includes folks in Virginia, Maryland, maybe West Virginia as well. Could see over 20 inches of rain. Kana, hurricane watches are now up for much of South Carolina, including Charleston, and all of the coastline of North Carolina up through Virginia Beach or the Virginia border. But Virginia and Virginia Beach, they're going to get some serious wind with this system as well. So here we go. Another nice day here on Wrightsville Beach, but you wouldn't know there's a hurricane out there just yet, but there was one, and we know it's coming, and the forecast, unfortunately, remains the same.
I know. It sounds like you're getting everybody prepared, Rob, and we appreciate that. I want to ask you, some of the models this morning said that the hurricane was going through what they called an eye wall replacement cycle. So in some of the models, the eye of the hurricane wasn't really as visible and as prominent as sometimes it is, and that once that's done, we could actually see this thing speed up. I mean, could we see it be a Cat 5 for a little bit and then drop down again?
Not out of the question. These eye wall replacement cycles you speak of, they occur within mature hurricanes, and we have one now. We had one pretty quickly. This thing rapidly intensified, got to Category 4 status really fast yesterday, and so we've been at that. And typically what will happen is there'll be more thunderstorms that kind of begin to form around the outside part of the eye, and those kind of squash the thunderstorms on the inside part of the eye, and that what we get is a replacement of the eye wall, and that takes several hours to do. We see some weakening and then strengthening after that, and the forecast from the National Hurricane Center in their discussion at 11 a.m. says just that this afternoon, tonight, we expect a re-strengthening to 140, maybe 150 mile an hour winds. To get to Category 5 status, we're taught we need 157 mile an hour winds, so that's a significant jump. May get there, may not, doesn't matter. When you're talking about 4 or 5 near landfall, that is damaging winds that can take down significant structures, and that's why everyone is being told to get back off the beach, Kana.
Okay, Rob, thank you. And I know where you're at. You mentioned this morning that you're sort of actually surrounded by water because you've got the ocean, plus there's some inland water as well. And so if this hurricane kind of stalls out and slows down, as you mentioned, and then just starts to dump rain, I mean, how problematic is this really?
Well, it's problematic for everybody. Here, we are more concerned about storm surge from the ocean coming this way, hitting up against these dunes. And on the other side of the dunes are a sound, an intercoastal waterway, and a river. So, and that's the case really across much of the tidewater of North Carolina, and it's that way quite often across the low country of South Carolina. So you get the surge kind of on both sides as the storm comes in and then leaves. Inland areas, the Piedmont, the mountain areas, that's where you get the rainfall. That's freshwater flooding. And I know we always do our coverage, at least to start from, along the beach, to be at the forefront when the storm comes in. And the most visible signs in the beginning are the wind and the waves that you see on the beach. But without fail, the number one killer from hurricanes is inland flooding. Wow. So we need to make that point that folks who live inland in North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, especially areas that have been saturated with rain this summer. It's been a very wet summer. These areas are going to flood. It's just a matter of how bad. So folks inland need to pay attention for sure. Kana.
Wow, Rob, thank you so much for highlighting that incredibly important point. We appreciate it. Also, we want to stick with the storm here. Gio Benitez is on the Outer Banks, and this is an area also under mandatory evacuations here. But we're talking about some 245,000 people that they want to get out of there. Gio, are people heeding these warnings?
Yeah, absolutely, Kana. Hey there. They are absolutely heeding these. The people that are traveling on this road right now are probably actually evacuating the area. Now, the reason that officials are saying people have to get out of here is because this is just one of 2 bridges out of the Outer Banks. So once that gets really congested with people, hopefully out before that storm hits, because by the time that storm hits, then you're talking about that storm surge that Rob is talking about. These bridges completely surrounded by water. We have some images right now showing that long lines are already forming in North Carolina of people evacuating certain areas. That's expected to continue over the next couple of days, hopefully not too late, but certainly over the next 24 hours or so. And in South Carolina, we're also seeing ambulances moving people to different hospitals because they just don't want to have them there in a dangerous situation. I want to bring in right now Major Ken Morris. Hey there. He's with the Salvation Army's disaster response team, and you know hurricanes. You've been doing this for a long time. What's most concerning to you right now?
Well, this storm is now going to affect more than just one state. There are now multiple states involved, and so our state leadership has moved now to a coordinated effort with a territorial leadership. And so funds are desperately needed now so that we can provide the hands-on help and the emotional and spiritual care. We've already got 15 canteens in Carolina, 10 in Virginia. We've got 27 already en route. They're going to be staged in Charlotte and in Roanoke, Virginia, and then they will come in. We are there now serving. We're helping the emergency personnel will be there before the storm, during the storm, and after the storm.
Because we're talking about a lot of people in this area.
A lot of people. A lot of people are required to evacuate, and I hope they do, because this is a big storm, and it will have a large effect in a large area. We're going to help the emergency personnel. Some of our folks are evacuating. Some are actually moving into emergency operations centers and sleeping there so they can provide food and be there with the help with the leadership. We've got...
You guys are taking this very seriously, too.
Oh, this is extremely serious. We've got a number of volunteers. Actually, we have over 3 million volunteers across the nation that can help us. But we need our partners in mission. Folks have come through wonderfully in the past. And again, in non-affected areas, we've got canteens coming in. It's like an accordion. As this thing increases, we increase our resources. As things finish off, then we'll lower it down. We've got over 50 canteens, mobile feeding units already
in the area.
But it'll probably grow beyond that, way beyond that.
And Major, what can people do right now? There's a lot of people watching this. They're watching this from all over the country, not necessarily affected by the storms, but some of them might say, we want to help. What do they do?
Right. If you get online to helpsalvationarmy.org, you can specify Florence Disaster Relief Effort. And with that relief effort, 100% of that will go towards the survivors of these areas, because we cover our own administrative costs and we use many volunteers, and so 100% of the funds given, and we need a lot of money.
All right.
Because this is a big thing. But again, this is what we do all along.
Yeah.
I mean, we're an international social welfare organization and church. We already have our command posts across the region.
So you
Even
are
in
ready
Carolina,
to take
North
this
and South Carolina, we've got about 50 folks. We're already there. The people are there. Even if we don't have a mobile feeding unit, all Salvation Army personnel are involved in some type of disaster effort. We'll be there through the storm. After the storm, we'll bring in more folks.
Perfect.
In fact, even now, my wife's in a conference with a long-term disaster recovery from a storm that hit 2 years ago.
Yeah,
Matthew,
I mean, it
in Greensboro,
continues,
North Carolina.
and that's
so
what,
we're there for the long haul.
Absolutely.
And as people give us more money, we can help more. We're not going to stop. We're going to continue to help indefinitely, but as people give us more money, we can do more services and we can provide more emotional and spiritual care. But again,
Perfect.
we do the feeding. We feed over 56 million meals throughout the year.
Well,
we already do shelter.
I have to send it back. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
You get it. This is the passion of disaster relief right
Thank
here.
you so much.
So Major,
Thank you
so much for joining us.
Yes.
And we, of course, will be checking in. Kano?
Okay, excellent.
Gio, thank you so very much. And, he is passionate about helping those people, and we appreciate it. Gio, we'll speak with you in a little bit. Everybody, I want you to keep in mind here that the governors of Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina have all declared states of emergency. And we want to go to South Carolina now. Steve Osunsami is there in Charleston. They have ordered their entire coastline to be evacuated there. I mean, we're talking about 1 million people just there, right, Steve?
It's a massive evacuation. All families in 8 counties starting at noon today, which is less than an hour. They're asking these families to leave the entire city of Charleston. Authorities are asking all families to leave. And I want you to take a look right now. This is what the coastline looks right now. It's nice and calm and quiet. But where we are standing, we have pictures of what it looked like a year ago during Hurricane Irma, so you can get what authorities here are worried about.
So we just lost his mic, but what you were looking at there is images of Hurricane Irma, and so that is fresh in everybody's minds just from last year in the Charleston area. And so when they see that, of course, people are starting to heed those warnings to evacuate. And I think we can check back in with Steve. And Steve, I know we'll be checking with Steve here throughout the show, but also I want to mention that people are using reverse highway directions to get out of those towns and to be safe. We now have new updated numbers and statistics from our weather forecast team. So we want to check in with Melissa Griffin. So the new models, they just came in. This thing just gets scarier and scarier. What's going on now?
That's right, Kana. So we have the 11 a.m. advisory from the National Hurricane Center. So all the latest, the new track. So Hurricane Florence is still a Category 4. Winds are 130 miles per hour. And Rob mentioned the eye wall replacement cycle. That is going to keep it at 130 miles per hour. So it hasn't strengthened yet, but it will be. It is expected to become stronger and continue to strengthen as it beelines toward the southeast. So let's take a look at the latest information from the National Hurricane Center. There it is. You can see the eye becoming a little bit more defined as it goes through the eye wall replacement cycle, and that will allow it to actually start to strengthen as it moves a little bit quicker towards the west-northwest. So here's the latest track. You can see it strengthening to possibly up to 150 miles per hour. That's by tomorrow morning as it begins to beeline towards the southeast coast. And then by Thursday, it's still a Category 4 at 140 miles per hour. That's Thursday morning, but I want to show you a zoomed-in version of this track so you can really see the timing. Now, latest from the National Hurricane Center, just off the coast, possible landfall overnight Thursday into Friday morning, looking like a Category 3. So it could weaken just a bit before it does make landfall. But regardless of that, I want everyone to take this storm very seriously. It's still a major storm barreling towards the Carolinas. Hurricane watches are now up, and storm surge watches are also in effect as well. Life-threatening storm surge is possible here in portions of South Carolina up through North Carolina. You can see there 6 to 12-foot storm surge from Cape Fear up through Cape Lookout. We're very concerned with this area as well into the Outer Banks. And another big concern with Florence is that as soon as it makes landfall, it will start to weaken, but it's not going to move anywhere. Significant inland flooding potential is possible as a high-pressure system blocks it there, and that's why we have this rain forecast. We're talking feet of rain possible here in parts of North Carolina up through Virginia, and that is going to continue into the weekend. So we're not going to be done with Florence for a little bit after it makes landfall. Of course, the first impacts are going to be the catastrophic wind damage and, of course, that storm surge. But even after landfall, it's going to just sit there and drop significant rain. So we have potential for very bad flooding right into the weekend for portions of North Carolina and Virginia.
Wow. And hey, Melissa, can I ask you, we keep talking about the cone of uncertainty, right? And there's sometimes in hurricanes we see, it's possible that it might spin off and not hit. I don't see that with these models. I mean, it looks like we kind of have this thing nailed down.
Right. So we're coming to that window now where there really is no turning back. All of the models coming into agreement that it really is going to beeline towards the Carolinas. There is still a chance that it could go somewhere further south, somewhere further north along the South Carolina or North Carolina coast. But that window is closing now, and it looks like the confidence is growing much, much higher now that it's going to make landfall as a major hurricane come Thursday night into Friday morning. So, yeah, look, if you take a look at those models there, really no outliers. Looks like it's heading for us. So.
Okay, Melissa.
The latest from the National Hurricane Center.
Wow, Melissa, thank you so much. We really appreciate that update. And of course, our eyes will be on Hurricane Florence as she just barrels towards the eastern seaboard. Also today, it's a somber anniversary. It marks 17 years since the September 11th terrorist attacks that killed nearly 3,000 people in New York City, Washington, D.C., and Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And Shanksville today is where President Donald Trump is, his wife Melania along there with him. They were speaking this morning at a ceremony, and I want to check in now with ABC's Kenneth Moten. He's in Washington, D.C. with more on what the president had to say at that ceremony today. Kenneth?
Kana, good to see you, my friend. This is President Trump's second 9/11 commemoration as Commander-in-Chief. He and the First Lady spending the morning near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where Flight 93 went down, as you mentioned, 17 years ago. Today, the Trumps joining others at a new Tower of Voices memorial to remember the 40 passengers and crew killed on that hijacked plane. The president honored them and recounted their final heroic moments before the crash. Actions the president says saved the lives of countless Americans and also saved the Capitol from a devastating strike. Take a listen.
On September 11th, 2001, a band of brave patriots turned the tide on our nation's enemies and joined the immortal ranks of American heroes. At this memorial on this sacred earth, in the field beyond this wall, and in the skies above our heads, we remember the moment when America fought back.
The president used this speech to deliver some strong words against terrorism, saying the U.S. will never submit to tyranny. You're taking a look there at the president and the first lady. They're honoring the lives lost. They toured the memorial site in that field outside of Shanksville, Pennsylvania. You can see the words on that. You can see the words there as the president and the first lady commemorate this a solemn day, saying that those lives will be remembered in honor forever there as they walk toward the camera there. Just a solemn tribute, Kana, as the president again marks his second commemoration as commander-in-chief.
Yeah, Kenneth, I think you called it a monument to American defiance. Still, though, Kenneth, as we know, the president started his morning, as he often does, by tweeting. And today, his tweets aimed at the FBI, at former Attorney General Eric Holder, the DOJ as well. And of course, he touched on the possible collusion between his campaign and Russia. What a way to start his day.
You're right, Kana. It's a solemn day of 9/11 tributes, where the president actually started his morning attacking the FBI, the DOJ, the Russia investigation, tweeting there's no evidence of collusion as he quoted commentators on Fox News. There's one tweet in particular that's getting some attention. The president mentioned fired FBI agent Peter Strzok, who sent those anti-Trump text messages to FBI attorney Lisa Page during the 2016 campaign as investigations were ongoing into Hillary Clinton's emails. The president tweeted, "New Strzok Page texts reveal media leak strategy so terrible, and nothing is being done at DOJ or FBI, but the world is watching and they get it completely." Now, Strzok's attorney responded to ABC News saying, quote, "The term media leak strategy in Mr. Strzok's text refer to a department-wide initiative to detect and stop leaks to the media. The president and his enablers," according to this a quote here from Peter Strzok's attorney, says the president and his enablers are once again peddling unfounded conspiracy theories to mislead the American people. Kana?
Well, Kenneth, thank you so very much. And also, we want to talk about the explosive allegations of some White House officials that they may actively be working against President Trump and his agenda. Donald Trump Jr. now speaking with ABC's Tara Palmieri, and we're lucky enough to have her here in the studio with us, and you see them right there as part of this conversation. It was interesting to me that, I guess not surprising, though, that he talked to you a little bit about how the number of people he feels his father can trust in the White House is incredibly small.
Very small. It seems that he's even reiterating the point that Bob Woodward makes in his book, that the president is becoming increasingly isolated in the sense that there are very few people that are actually working in the same direction that he is. And while he wrote about staffers like the National Economic Advisor, Gary Cohn, and the Staff Secretary, Rob Porter, who both don't work in the White House anymore, but how they were actually taking documents off his desk for fear that he would sign them, specifically NAFTA and the Korean trade agreement that he was thinking about getting out of. So it's really interesting to hear him almost cooperate that.
Yeah, absolutely. He said that this op-ed, he believes, was written by a low-level person the DOJ should investigate. He's also reiterating what his father has said there.
Right, and he called this person disgraceful. It's a lot of the same language, you know, but at the same time I ask him, well, what's the crime? And he says subversion, you know, subverting the will of the president. But is that criminal? That's the question.
Yeah, and what did he say to you about this 2016 meeting at Trump Tower to try and dig up dirt on Hillary Clinton? I know that was part of the conversation.
He says that he doesn't think that anyone else would say no to this meeting. He maintains that. And he said that he doesn't think he did anything illegal. And he reiterates, which he has testified, that he did not tell his father about the meeting. And that is the key to this entire case.
And I think we have a little bit of that. I hope we can play that conversation quickly.
Your father has denied reports that he's worried that you might be in legal jeopardy because of the Mueller investigation. But are you scared that you could go to jail?
I'm not, because I know what I did, and I'm not worried about any of that. You know, that doesn't mean they won't try to create something. I mean, we've seen that happen with everything. But, you know, again, I'm not.
Well, also with an eye on the midterm elections here. I mean, if the Democrats take over the House, that could be catastrophic for the Trump presidency.
Not just for Trump, but for his son as well, because with Democrats having subpoena power, that goes everywhere. It doesn't just go into the Trump presidency, it goes into his business, the Trump organization that Don Jr. runs. And he seems to have a pretty strong awareness of that.
Yeah.
And when he's out on the campaign trail, he's making it clear that this is a referendum on his father. And if they lose the House, that means impeachment for his father.
Throwing around the word impeachment in that conversation was unbelievable. And they're really asking their voters to come out, of course, in November. Thank you so much for sitting with us. That was an excellent conversation. We really appreciate it. This is ABC News Live, everybody, and we want to leave you with some images of some ceremonies that are happening, again, around the country today to remember those that we lost 17 years ago in the September 11th terrorist attacks.